with solar being so new, I think what we've always heard is that you first have to convince people to go solar. And then the second challenge is convince people to go solar with you. Right. And so in that sense, you can actually ride that wave of a big national player coming in.
All right, welcome back to the Power Up Live podcast stage presented by KeyBank Capital Markets. My name is Nico Johnson. I'm the host here as well as on the Suncast podcast. But today we're going to be hosted by someone else who we often have on the Suncast stage, and that is my good friend Scott Nguyen. If you are in the residential solar industry, you have to deal with sales on a day-to-day basis. And my guess is that you are experiencing the title of today's talk. Oh shit, my sales are half what they used to be. How to deal with that and how to help you through it are the conversation of the day with my friend Scott from Bodhi. He's the CEO of the tech platform Bodhi that helps all across the solar landscape. We also have joining Scott, Rachel Finn, finance specialist at Greentech Renewables, and Mr. Stan Pipkin, CEO at Lighthouse Solar down in Texas. Scott, I'm going to hand it off to you and get off the stage.
All right. Thanks a lot, Nico. So we did a panel like this last year where we're kind of looking forward to what happens post-sale. But of course, the landscape has changed quite a bit. And so what we wanted to do today was really kind of just talk about the elephant in the room, which is shit. My sales are half of what they used to be. So I want to welcome everyone to today's special panel. Shit, my sales are half what they used to be. Strategy to overcome high interest rates and be ready to grow when the market does rebound. And as we wait for anybody else to kind of trickle in, I think those that are aware of the webinars that Bodhi puts on, you guys know that I like to start off with a dad joke. So are you guys ready for that? Okay, so what did my dog say when I asked her what 2 minus 2 is? She said nothing.
They don't even have to
Thanks,
do
Stan.
solar.
Oh, thank you.
Nice. You're a killer.
Thanks, Stan.
The sphere is just opening for you, I think.
It is starting. So thanks for joining me. So, all right, let's start. I want to thank everyone for coming to today's event in this panel right now. Like Nico said, I'm Scott Nguyen, the founder and CEO of Bodhi, a software platform that helps residential solar companies deliver amazing customer experiences with ease. Now, before I begin, I just want to get a quick poll of the audience here. Not quite that many, but how many are in the audience? There are solar installers, residential solar installers out there. Okay, keep your hands up if you have seen your sales numbers fall short of your forecast for 2023. All right. Okay. Now, how many of you actually have a solid plan that you're comfortable with to make it through to when the market does rebound? All right. That's 0. Oh, I got half a hand right there. Hey, I'll tell Colin about your half hand. All right. So why are we here today? So what we're going to try to do is answer the question, how can we overcome those high interest rates now and really be ready to grow when the market does rebound, because it's going to happen. This is a solar coaster. And today what we have, as Nico mentioned, we got two heavyweights in the industry here to answer that question and give us tips on what we can do within our own solar businesses. So we have Rachel Finn, a commercial finance specialist at Greentech Renewables. So Rachel, for those that are not familiar with Greentech Renewables finance, I think most people just try to buy panels and other stuff from y'all. Can you give just a quick 30-second explanation of the finance component?
Yeah, absolutely. So all of our specialists, we're all Greentech employees. And so we partner with lenders. And so we will create either like specials, we'll have lower dealer fees, things like that. So it just helps to route the money where it needs to go faster.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And then we also have Stan Pipkin, the CEO. Oh, can you move your mic a little bit closer? All right. We also have Stan Pipkin, who is the CEO of Lighthouse Solar. You guys have been around for how long ago now?
In actual years or solar years?
In dog years.
The dog years to the joke. It's 15 years or so.
15 years in Central Austin. And let everyone know Stan put solar on my house back in 2017. And once again,
and we're still talking.
I know, it was great, right? And I think once again in, I don't know, about a year or two ago. All right, so we want to have audience participation. So you do have any questions, just raise your hand, come out right here in the middle. I'll call on you. And so we'll also save time at the end for Q&A. All right, so let's dive in, and see what kind of the panelists have, insights that they have to offer. I want to first set the stage. We already know what the title is, but if you guys remember last year at this time, there are a lot of folks out there that will argue that we were actually at peak residential growth. Pink Energy Power Home, they declared bankruptcy while we were at the conference last year. That's when interest rates really started to climb. And then since then, this year, it's been tough for a lot of installers across the US. And so I was looking at the Ohm Analytics market report, and I forgot exactly, but they were saying about, so far this year is about a 5 to 10% drop in residential solar once you start to exclude California versus last year. And so let's start, tackle this question right away. I mean, what are you guys seeing, Rachel, with your customers? How are they doing this year relative to last year?
I mean, I would say they're definitely plateauing this year. They were very optimistic last year. They were growing exponentially, but this year I think a lot of our installers they've pulled back on either staffing or, I don't know.
And what do you think is it that, okay, so two questions. First is, what do you think is the root cause of that? And then second, is there any distinction between the types of installers that are facing the most issues?
Let's start with that second part. I would say that the national installers seem to be having the most trouble. Our local installers, our regional installers seem to actually, after a little bit of rockiness, they figured out how to pivot, and then they've actually, I'd say that they're plateauing, but they're optimistic for next year. And I think that there's a lot of kind of things in the works, either financially or just, the IRA, some, policy that I think that they're going to I think they'll be fine next year. And they're optimistic.
They're optimistic. Stan, you optimistic, or what's happening in the Central Texas region? I mean, Texas, a year ago, 2 years ago, saw tremendous growth. I think Texas last year had the largest growth in solar across the U.S. This year's been a very different case in the state. What are y'all seeing?
Yeah, actually, what Rachel just described is we are a regional company, and we're situated in Central Texas and really have been. I'd say that's pretty accurate. Like solar is seasonal in Texas in particular, and this spring, kind of, we always expect a slow time as a lag from the winter. It persisted more than, and so there's some tenuous months, but it's actually rebounded much faster and more robustly in ways that we did have to pivot. We started some things, put some things in place that are bearing fruit now, and so we're actually more bullish than we had been.
So can you expand on what that pivot was for your company?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the last couple of days here at the show, like what I look around, there's the basement hall, there's the main hall, and then there's another hall in another building, and they all have kind of a different tone. They have, different offerings. It's much more varied than previous years, and that's like that principle, like a varied set of offerings, has been the space that we've been able to move into, which means like it's not just solar plus storage, but we've seen our customers still want to do something. Financing has limited the ease of access to do something very quickly. But if we can offer multiple avenues of how they begin the journey and start a relationship with a company like ours or others, then they become customers. And that's sort of the follow-on sales. That cycle is much faster than we expected. And so we're getting repeat customers that are 1 year old. And
1 year old?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're selling solar, and then maybe can you expand on that? What are they doing in that second year?
Yeah, I think folks come with the interest of solar plus storage, the full Monty, and then they say, well, we can't finance this; it's too expensive. Cash maybe we've got a plan for that. You start breaking it apart and say, how do we plan this roadmap and you can kind of do it selectively. And the access points could be EV charging right now. It could be a small solar system to kind of figure this out. It could be monitoring alone. Those are all very distinct sales opportunities and require a different approach with the sales team. So our sales team has had to become more cross-trained in some of these technologies, but it's allowed those opportunities not to wither or go away. They catalyze something that will mature in the next seasons, we'll say.
And so on that topic of that pivot, Rachel, do you have an example of what some of your companies have done in that pivot?
Yeah, I mean, it starts from either the way that they sell. So maybe they were doing online marketing, mainly phone calls and things like that. And then I've had several installers engage in like farmers markets and things like
Farmers
that.
markets.
Farmers markets.
Okay.
They get a lot
It's
of
not
leads
just
that way.
Sunrun at Costco. Is that what it was before,
No.
right?
It's a little different, more kombucha.
More kombucha.
Yeah.
Okay, sales tip out there. Brand your own kombucha. Add that with your solar sale,
Great.
according to Rachel Finn.
So I'd say sales, and then maybe they're looking in, I do focus on commercial, but I also cover residential. So maybe they're doing residential solar installation, but, they're moving more meaningfully into commercial or, to help with
Yeah,
sales.
I've heard that. I've heard that even though for the companies, I think CNI I've heard is actually doing decently this year compared to previous years. Stan, your company has always had a resi component and a commercial component. How do those two play, and how have those varied through the years?
Yeah, we always have had a fairly diverse set of offerings. Residential has been kind of the backbone. I'd say the three legs of the stool for us right now are residential, commercial, and service. So they all have distinctive, kind of sales processes and operational workflows. What we're finding, we have the stack is more weighted towards commercial. It's still not predominant, but it's more intense. And then service has grown kind of radically. And then the other thing that we've noticed is that they're intermingling. So one of the challenges we have internally is, we get an interest, and it is both a residential project and a service lead at the same time.
Could you describe that? Could you explain that a little bit more?
People are, we get a number of customers, not ours, but others that may have been orphaned. And so I think that's distinct in Texas when you speak about the bankruptcies. They come in and say, something's not working, and I want to look at batteries or an expansion. And so there's simultaneously, a re-engagement of their system. And then they realize that they need something else altogether. And so we're seeing a lot of commingling of that internally. The same happens between residential and commercial. We focus on small commercial, so there is legitimate overlap from our customer base that way. So that diversity has been a bit of an inoculation to the kind of big, the big change in the interest rates really just cut out not just access to solar, but actually a robust indirect marketing channel for companies like us. So the Powers, the Pink, the others that are very, they're blanketing the landscape, and they're sort of plowing up interest, and that interest doesn't all go to them; it goes to everybody else. And so that was a realization for us that we were drafting on that, sort of awareness building campaign that was part of, the marketing of many different companies overlapping.
Yeah, it's true. I think it's like with solar being so new, I think what we've always heard is that you first have to convince people to go solar, and then the second challenge is convince people to go solar with you, right? And so in that sense, you can actually ride that wave of a big national player coming in.
Yeah. On that front, sorry to piggyback
for
on you,
sure.
Scott, is that I have an installer in Colorado who partnered with the local utility for that sort of thing. Like maybe the solar starts to be installed and then the company goes out of business. And so this particular solar installer will then kind of come in and pick up the pieces and then, attract some additional sales.
Yeah,
so.
That's right.
And so what you're saying is that you're able to pick up that project, complete that, get some of the revenue from it. But Stan, you're replying is that there is a whole nother potential customer value to be gained just from doing that because of all the additional sales opportunities. to that customer?
For sure. I mean, we can't sort of predetermine what comes up when it's a latency. So they're there, something happened, something was wrong, and they realize they need something. But we kind of believe that everybody is we're kind of beyond the place where we need to convince people to do solar. Now it's really, how do we guide them through this entire energy journey?
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't know where they are on that. So the first step is just to present an honest inquiry. And I'd say that's kind of the other big thing we've recognized. Like, there's a vacuum of trust in Texas in particular. It's probably in other markets, but we're picking up the pieces from things that just didn't work, and have left a lot of consumers doubting our industry's capacity to deliver on our promise.
Yeah.
And so just doing that alone goes a long way.
Okay. I want to shift the conversation a little bit. I mean, one thing we haven't really touched on too much right now is just the high interest rates that are out there for, those traditional loans that are financed, let's say, from the Mosaics, Dividends, Sunlights of the world. The one area that has grown in the past half a year are third-party financing, PPAs, leases. How do y'all see that within y'all's business and kind of the landscape, Rachel? I mean, how does third-party financing at all play into the financing options that Greentech provides?
Absolutely. Yeah. I would say that there are more and more financiers who are bringing on leases as part of their offerings. There is a definite interest, especially in California. Any of the installers that I've talked to recently who are actually growing are utilizing leases right now, or PPAs.
Sure.
Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely helping them grow because it's more of what salespeople are comfortable. It's a bill swap, right? Like, you could be spending $200 to the utility or $150 on a lease.
But I'd say I've heard those from sales folks that have never sold leases or PPAs before. It is actually a very different sales process, and it's actually kind of hard to try to present it to the consumer, the homeowner, the different options. Like, hey, here's buying your system. Here's a different option. Stan, I mean, you guys have a good portion of your business, which are cash. You do loans, not just from the big guys, but from some of the credit unions and smaller ones. How do you see those different options as compared to trying out, let's say, one of the new PPAs or lease options that are out there?
Yeah, I mean, our particular set of utility markets, some are, the leases and PPAs are just not available because of the utility regulations. In other places, the rates are so low that the economics are just dodgy. In the areas where the rates can be higher, we found it's a very difficult conversation, one that you can handle, but many customers aren't ready to understand all the exposures to rate changes in the deregulated market. And a PPA or a lease is kind of a fixed program, and so the offer needs to be very simplified, so that from a execution standpoint, you control the cost and the price. So we're not inside Lighthouse, we're not seeing a huge opportunity. Like, that's actually the market in Texas, ERCOT, and the pricing. The way that's working, I think there's a lot of risk for us. We're actually seeing more opportunity to bring the banks and the credit unions into the solar space in a more mature way. I mean, I think the financing companies have done good to seed the interest and speak about financing ownership. And credit unions, I think, are picking up that. So it's, in some ways we're trailing that solar has become more bankable. It's a secured asset, even though maybe it's not papered up in the same way that a lease or PPA is. But I think we're pulling institutions off the sidelines, which is exciting.
Yeah. All right, man, 30 minutes time flies when we're having these conversations. So I want to jump into a third conversation or third topic. I mean, we know that the market will rebound. We've been through the solar coaster before. What are y'all doing, or what are you seeing, Rachel, with some of the installers that you're working with? What are they doing right now to plan for that future so that when the market does rebound, let's say, hopefully maybe next year, Q2, someone told me that, I don't know. How can they dominate their market? Because right now, companies, there's those that are not doing well, they're falling to the wayside. And so what can they do to be the ones to be on top of that market when that market does rebound?
Yeah, well, kind of going back to what I said earlier about the fact that we've seen regional installers really, they're the ones I think are going to succeed in this market, and especially next year. So I think just leaning into that, like being the expert in your area, so whether that's like creating relationships with the utilities,
The
with
permit office?
the permit office, like I think really just leaning into being the regional expert. And then I think that's what I've seen most, actually.
Yeah, I would draft that a little bit. I mean, we're our existing customers are our strongest antidote to this fluctuation, and Texas now has 2 seasons, summer and
Freezing.
catastrophic freezes. So I think that we're looking at like how does the resiliency system, so solar plus storage, and really understand the customer's experience through those potential events. So it means being far more intentional about communicating to them, both in a kind of a project journey and then a closeout, and then like the functional life of the early life of a system. So someone invests in a very complicated, powerful, high-tech system at their house, and they don't know how to drive it. And we need to make sure they know how to drive it through kind of good times and bad times. And that's our approach to building a customer base that, knows us, trusts us, understands what it is, and then can promote it.
And speaking about a customer base that trusts you, you guys actually did something more recently with Enphase and Span, this collaboration, kind of a marketing thing to try to re-engage those customers. Can you tell the audience a little bit about that program and where you're able to get those marketing dollars from?
Yeah. So I think it's not a novel idea, but it sounded like it was unprecedented in the solar space. So I've heard now there's MDF, co-op dollars. It's essentially pulling the manufacturers and the distributors into market creation rather than just serving the market. And it's still brand forward. So it's Lighthouse's event, but it's kind of bringing our ecosystem to bear to say we're all doing this together. It's not transactional. Our success is dependent on, a supplier making good choices upstream and presenting that to the customers. And some of these were customers that have, they're 12 years. They've been with us. And I was shocked. It was a small event, but it was promising to say that these folks, we haven't heard from them. We haven't talked to them necessarily, but they're paying attention. And so I think it goes back to the case that we don't know what people out there are really thinking. And my hunch is, and what we're starting to validate is that they're thinking they're aligned with us. It's just getting surfacing that is the challenge.
Do we have questions from the audience that y'all want to pose to either Rachel or Stan? Any questions whatsoever? Adam.
Question.
My question's on the sales side of, I find it's often triggered by some event from the customer's user experience where it's the big 3 that we started off with is I'm looking for a new roof or I just put on a new roof. How does solar, like that's what's making them start to think about solar. Getting an EV or getting a heat pump. Those are the big 3 that we would do targeted marketing as. I think we've added 4 and 5 in terms of this is the biggest bill I've ever gotten in my life is 1. And then I've had a power outage and now I'm interested in backup. Can you guys add like 6, 7, 8 of any other triggering events that you see of the customers aren't thinking about solar just because solar. We all love solar on this show, but the customers are thinking about it in terms of that trigger event and how does solar blend with that and from their unique user experience. So can you guys expand on any other trigger events that you think of from their perspective?
Do you want to start or I can? So I think that's actually a pretty good list. I would start to qualify the trigger. There are acute triggers, which are, it's event-based. Doesn't have to be the biggest bill. It's actually any bill. And if it's, I think there's also like environmental. So if it's been hot in our part of the world for 100 straight days over 100, there's fatigue, and they just say I can't do this anymore, and that starts to overlap with the outage. So we're seeing fewer like singular triggers, but there's kind of combined environmental, like there's a feeling. So I actually think your list is actually pretty good. There are others that are probably kind of nuanced. Just moving into a house is a big one. They're looking at kind of the whole picture. So the first bill in a new house is also a real trigger. Kind of the unexpected.
Yeah. Rachel, do you have anything to add there?
I mean, just personally, I mean, we always get these emails from ERCOT right now, like, can we conserve energy from 5 until 9 every night? But now we're starting to get these, we're at like critical level 2 of like potentially rolling blackouts. Yeah. So that's a huge one. That's, hits me very personally.
All right, we only got a couple of minutes left, so if you do have questions, I think the panelists will be here afterwards as well. But I want to just have a little bit of a outro, real quick, rapid fire. 2024 will be
rebounding and difficult.
2024 will be
stabilizing.
That's official words from Rachel Finn and Stan Pipkin. I want to thank everyone sitting out there and all those listening in on the live broadcast and on the Suncast podcast.